It's a really good question. So when it comes to leadership development, our firm has been around since 2006, and I like to use the term full stack. So we have a full stack of leadership development services, from frontline manager training to assessments to mid-level management training to executive development and training in a group sense. And that's pretty common. What my passion is that and one-on-one coaching. So to answer your question specifically around one-on-one coaching, typically would engage at the direct.
Welcome to Career Coaching Secrets, the podcast where we talk with successful career coaches on how they built their success and the hard lessons they learned along the way. My name is Davis Nguyen, and I'm the founder of Purple Circle, where we help career coaches scale their business to $100,000 years, $100,000 months, and even $100,000 weeks. Before Purple Circle, I've grown several 7- and 8-figure career coaching businesses myself, and have been a consultant at 2 career coaching businesses that are doing over $100 million each. Whether you're an established coach or building your practice for the first time, you'll discover the secrets to elevating your coaching business.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Career Coaching Secrets podcast. I'm your host, Regine, and today's guest is Michael Brainard, a seasoned executive coach, organizational strategist, and founder and CEO of Brainerd Strategy, where he helps leaders and organizations align strategy, talent, and culture to drive measurable results. With over 15 years of experience as management consultant, senior executive, entrepreneur, and researcher, and advanced degrees including an MA, MS, and PhD, Michael blends strategic insight with behavioral science to guide leaders through complex challenges. He has partnered with executives across industries on everything from organizational assessment and strategic alignment to leadership development, merger and acquisition integration, and cultural transformation. And it's a pleasure for me to have him on the podcast today. Welcome to the show, Michael.
Thank you for having me, Regine. I look forward to spending some time with you.
Thank you for coming, Michael. It's a pleasure for us to have you on. I wanted to ask you, when it comes to you starting your work as a coach and having your own coaching business. First of all, what inspired you to take that step forward and then start and do this as a business?
Well, I have a pretty long answer for that, but I'll try to shorten it for you. So when I was a child, I would watch my mother come home from jobs, and she was sometimes treated poorly because she was more of an administrative person. This is the 1970s. In college, I was a wrestler. I got injured. My buddy asked me if I'd come help out the high school team while I recovered. I thought, I don't know much about coaching, but I've been around coaches a lot. So I started coaching athletics, and I noticed you couldn't just invite the kids to be like you. That's not coaching. So I became interested in how to connect to create sort of change, or someone's ability to change and develop and grow. Way back then. Went to graduate school, kind of came up through the academic channel, didn't really know a ton about executive coaching, but I knew through my industrial organizational psychology studies that leadership development and understanding the human condition inside of organizations were really interesting for me. So I got academically, through research, and then through practice, through my 30s, pretty adept at leadership development, understanding leadership theories, why it matters, how it connects, how to engage leaders. But it wasn't until probably my later 30s or early 40s when I started feeling that I could sit with a senior executive and add value. And so that was kind of the journey that brought me into more executive coaching, I'll say.
But right now, coaching is not the only part of Brainerd Strategy, right? Is a part of it, but there's also a lot of organizational strategy there and working on culture. So I wanna understand a little bit better when it comes to the types of clients that you work with. How would you describe that ideal client profile? Is it of a certain industry only? We actually mentioned on the intro that you are working across industries. So maybe industry is not one, but is there a demographic or maybe some common goals or some other commonalities that you are noticing between
So you're right. What I do, I'm kind of industry agnostic. Of course, I have to know the language of given industries, but I don't have to be an expert in industry to be an executive coach. My coaching is focused on leadership development, strategy, business acumen, those kinds of spheres, as it were. For that, then, my target clients really fall into 2 categories. They are aspiring executives, really good leaders who the organization needs and wants to develop toward a broader, more scalable leadership role in an executive capacity. A little bit more of a minority is the person that is technically brilliant, finance, engineering, technology, but really has had little exposure to real leadership development because they're in a mid-sized company, for example, or their journey just hasn't brought them through the ranks, but they need to develop rapidly or frankly fix something about their interaction with other humans because they're technically brilliant, but they're not there. So yeah, it can work across industries, but when we target, we're really targeting a certain kind of leader, whether it's the aspiring executive or it's the technocrat who really needs to understand leadership behaviors and frankly, understand more about themselves to be able to unlock that potential. So we work in nonprofits, we work in $100 billion organizations that are multinational. So it doesn't matter the industry so much, it matters the profile of the learner.
Cool. And for those of us listening, I didn't mention to you this earlier, but when it comes to like the people that are listening to the podcast, is typically mostly other coaches, but also many of actually are also the audiences of the coaches we've had on the podcast before. So we might have also some of these leaders listening. So for those listening that could fit that profile, how would you describe the engagement of working with you? Is there a certain program of a certain length? How would you describe the engagement? Is it one-on-one coaching? Is there group coaching?
It's a really good question. So when it comes to leadership development, our firm has been around since 2006. And I like to use the term full stack. So we have a full stack of leadership development services, from frontline manager training to assessments, to mid-level management training, to executive development and training in a group sense. And that's pretty common. What my passion is that and one-on-one coaching. So to answer your question specifically around one-on-one coaching, typically would engage at the director or above level. Again, that aspiring leader on either a 6, 9, or 12-month engagement, where the process of the coaching interaction, frankly, is almost as important as the content of the interaction. What does that mean? We believe that helping one's self-awareness, I'll say, in a broad sense, through assessments is the kind of beginning of the coaching journey. We believe aligning key stakeholders like boss, human resources partners, team members, peers, engaging them to get alignment around the actual outcomes or desired behavior changes or enhancements. So we believe in the first third of the coaching engagement, we're working through assessments and we're engaging the ecosystem of the leader. Round about the middle part of the coaching engagement, we're really working. We've built the trust, we've built the credibility, we have the knowledge. We're really now working toward those developmental targets or outcomes. And then in the last third of coaching, I'm trying to create sustainability. So how do we find our triggers? How do we create sustainability in these new approaches? One thing I'll say about coaching that I'm passionate about, whether you're listening as a coach or we're not trying to change anyone. That's not our goal. What we're trying to do is increase skill sets, increase insights, increase choices that you would have. For example, Regine, you would have when you approach this kind of team or performer, you've always gone this direction. But what if you had 2 or 3 other options or choices in different scenarios? So we're trying to increase the degrees of freedom or the choice set so that the learner or the leader increases their ability to move and scale much better.
Interesting. So you're kind of like widening their area of thought of where they could actually go in different situations with their team. Do you also happen to work with their team as well?
In some cases, not in all. In many of the one-on-one coachings, we stay with the person. Now, again, we'll engage the supervisor, we'll engage maybe some key stakeholders in the beginning and, frankly, at the end of the coaching from a business arrangement. Did we hit those targets? What's the next step in the person's journey? We want to make sure we have a career action planning meeting at the end of the coaching. So, yes, we'll engage folks then. But during the body of the coaching, we're mostly working at about every 2 weeks, sharing insights, sharing stories. It's a push-pull kind of relationship. You go out into your organization, you practice, we're thinking, we're trying new frameworks, and then we come back at about every 2 weeks in that 6, 9, or 12-month period to have coaching sessions, review what's working, not working, and move ahead. Always on that path toward the ultimate developmental outcomes that the person and the organization have identified.
Cool. And so I heard you also said we and also like supervisor. So is there like a team that you have a team structure that is helping you out right now?
Exactly. So let me just answer that pretty specifically. We have an inside-outside approach. We actually call it the inside-outside approach. So outside, in the organization, we want to engage the supervisor or the person we're coaching, most often the HR business partner or learning and development partner, and in many cases, perhaps a key stakeholder who's a peer, possibly. Mm-hmm. Inside, I can't do what I do alone, right? We have a team. I have a project manager, a person who's expert in assessments, and a person who does all the coordination so that the corporate client isn't burdened by administrative work, project management work, and assessment work. So we have a project manager assigned to every single one of our executive coaching engagements that sort of backs me up, holds me accountable, and is responsible for driving the process of the coaching.
Interesting. I haven't seen this approach before. This is very interesting. So and this is a question that goes back to that research that I mentioned. Where do you find your clients now? Is there a certain marketing channel that you've seen working very well?
Yes and no. So at the top of that answer for me, I've worked very hard to be able to provide thought leadership. And so I didn't earn that right early in my career. I've earned that right in a couple of specific ways. Believe me, there's so much I'm not a thought leader on, but when it comes to strategy and business and leadership, I try to position our firm, frankly, and me as a thought leader. And so how does that show up? We publish regularly in Forbes. We publish on LinkedIn, and I have done one TEDx talk, which has been the source of, let's call that marketing, some appeal in the market that says Michael Brainard or Brainerd Strategy is going to be a credible resource when we think about executive development or leadership development. So in terms of channels, I don't know how to answer that other than we've been doing this a long time. So we kind of have, I know that's not the best answer. We do kind of have a brand or a reputation, small as it is, we have it. And then LinkedIn and Forbes and YouTube have been really in the last decade very, very helpful for us to spread this word that, hey, if you're looking for a resource, we are credible. And that's kind of what we're trying to do.
I see. So you've set up your brand in a way where you have reached your audience, but in an organic way where you're not actively chasing your clients, but they're actually coming to you.
That's exactly right. Yeah, the sell is never the right approach in our business. What is more important is the fit. Can we add value? Because if we sell and we can't fit, that kills the brand. So the idea is that we're here, we're credible, we've got some experience and access to other resources. We'll take a look and see if we might be a fit. That's kind of the positioning.
Cool, nice. I really like that type of approach. And so thinking strategically about your goals right now with the business for the next 1 to 3 years, do you have any specific goals you're working towards?
Getting smarter, hopefully, getting more insightful, hopefully. The answer is about every year. So I'll answer your question a little bit differently, maybe. Every year, around about November, December, because we're quite a small firm, I actually sit down and say, what do I want to go deep on next year? I do it every year. What do I want to go deep on next year? When I go deep, that means I'm spending a year focusing my development and my learning around a topic. A topic for me, an example would have been bias that led to a TED Talk. However, another one, 2 years ago, I decided to spend a year on decision-making theory. These are all components of leadership development or executive development. So every year I go deep on these topics. Sometimes they produce nothing, no content, no training package, nothing, but they just help me grow. So I'm trying to be a better professional by going deep into a variety of topics over the course of my career so that ultimately I'm adding value for our clients. Now, more specifically in terms of growing the business, yeah, it'd be nice to grow the business. The business is grown. The business is healthy. We have a real good blend of one-on-one coaching and group and development work. Again, could we be busier? Maybe. I like working at capacity that's client-facing less than 40 hours a week. It keeps us fresh. It keeps us sharp. It allows us to do some reading and research and be thought leaders. So we don't want to be client-facing at full capacity as a goal. But to grow the business would be nice, but it's not the primary goal. The primary goal is keep our brand intact and keep that value proposition intact. That's the primary goal.
Mm-hmm. So kind of like maintaining the level of results you are getting your clients right now and keeping the current capacity as it is. And maybe slightly growing if there's
That's right.
opportunity.
That's right.
Cool. And so, do you right now are you facing any challenges with your business in order to either maintain where you are or any challenges at all, either from your capacity or from the team's capacity? What challenge would you say are you facing mostly that you're trying to solve for next short term?
Well, I could say a couple things about that. One is the coaching space in corporations has become incredibly popular. It's a crowded space. Where even a decade, it was significantly less crowded. And in that crowded space, there's a lot of coaching around the edges, or maybe not the best. So the very reputation of one-on-one executive coaching is being challenged right now by the amount of people that are calling themselves certified coaches. That's a challenge. The second challenge is with the access to information vis-a-vis AI, artificial intelligence, there are a lot of internal professionals that are quite good that have access to large language models around providing coaching. Frankly, it's analogous to what's happened in the therapy market, right? Some of these large language models are demonstrating to be more empathetic in some cases than human facilitators. So I think understanding how artificial intelligence will impact the act of development, whether it's coaching, group development, learning, creating insights in others, it's going to be interesting to see, is the human a vessel of change, or is it the information without the human? Can that exist? That's going to be fascinating to see.
Absolutely. It's actually been a challenge that I've had on the podcast also before. Also, like just knowing where this is going next. AI in itself has become very unpredictable, but that and kind of like standing out, like I said, there's a crowded market. There's more and more coaches every day, but I also feel like there's more people who need coaching, and not necessarily it means that they know that they need coaching.
Right.
They do need coaching. They just like some people might not be yet accustomed to coaching. Some people are not very open to coaching because oftentimes, let's say when you're working, maybe you might have faced this as well, is you might be working with a leader. You work initially with CEO and he wants you to work on a leader. They feel like they might be in trouble or something because the coach is working with them. It's not always very clear as so far. I feel like it's getting there, but still for some people it's not clear that is more on the development side versus like you're in trouble or anything like that.
Yeah, I think you're right there. And, organizations play a large part in that, right? So organizations who use coaching to fix broken, that sends the wrong message, right? Organizations that leverage coaching to develop and help people ascend in their thinking and their career, fabulous, right? And to your point about the individual learner, right? I have a coach. Well, of course, I understand the value of coaching, right? I understand that I'm always on a journey to improve myself. There are a lot of people that are content in what they're doing, and that's fantastic as well. To your point earlier, though, there is a very large and growing market for people who aspire to be better and aspire to be out in front rather than chasing or catching up. So I think the market for coaching will never go away. I just don't know what form and how it might manifest over the coming years, but no one knows that.
Absolutely. And wanted to ask you also about investments throughout the years. And this is data we're collecting for our research. So what have been some good investments you've made in your coaching business? You can think about any type of investment that you feel good about. Either you learned a lot or you got a good return from. Could be coaching programs, masterminds, communities, could be anything type of investment. And what have been maybe some investments that you don't feel so good about, if there's any, that you feel like, I should have avoided that, was not a good use of my time?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a good question. In the past, I've been approached by brokers. There's sort of a brokerage model where people will sell me as a coach on behalf of their platform. I have dabbled in those partnerships that have been some form of investment, and they've not largely worked. I'm not exactly sure why, to be honest with you. I'm not sure I'm smart enough to know why, but they haven't worked. The investments that we've made have largely been in our processes, our ability to make it easy for the corporate client to onboard us. And that comes through Salesforce and some of our project management, frankly, software, and how our project managers interact with the corporate client. One of the things you've mentioned is that the coaching market, the need for coaching is very large. Sometimes integrating me and a relative stranger into a corporate environment, into a team, into a C-suite, sometimes we take that for granted. We have worked at our firm to invest in making that as easy and seamless for the HR executive and or the C-suite person we're coaching as possible. There's still things the person has to do, like assessments and things like that. But we've tried to invest in technology and process such that it's easy to integrate us into an existing system.
Interesting. And so the burst working with that, you would say, was not a very good investment of your time so far. Cool. And the final question I have for you is, for the coaches who are looking to scale their impact, is there any advice you'd give to these coaches?
Yes, maybe old school advice and maybe new school advice. Old school advice is don't think about coaching. Think about owning a niche, becoming expert in a niche to the advantage of then expanding your influence to become an organizational asset, a team asset, and a broader leadership asset. But to market as a coach, there's many, many definitions of what coaching means. And if you go to Qualcomm or Amazon or Google, there'll be different uses of coaching and different definitions of coaching. But if I can be an expert in an aspect of leadership development and then demonstrate competence in other aspects of leadership development, I can be known for something. I can be known for something, and now the market can see me as a thought leader. That's important. New school, more new school, is the use of social media, appropriate social media, right? We're not on Instagram singing songs. That's not our market. Our market is the corporate C-suite, the chief learning officer, the chief human resources officer. So when we're thinking about scaling our brand or scaling our presence, I would challenge my colleagues, myself, frankly, I'll challenge myself to be smarter and sharper about how we're showing up in those forums, both online and in person, but frankly, mostly online. But I don't solve that for myself yet either. But that's kind of what I would want to do if I were to actively give somebody advice on how to scale is own something narrow within executive development and then understand and be expert at all aspects of business strategy and leadership development. And then finally, find those social platforms where our buyers and our consumers of coaching go and position ourselves as we wish in those forums.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Michael. Thank you so much for coming to the podcast today. For anyone who wants to connect with you or find you, they can go onto LinkedIn, look up Michael Brainard. They'll be able to find you. They can also go into the website, brainerdstrategy.com.
And we have a YouTube channel also called Brainerd Strategy, so you can find some of our work samples there.
Cool. Thank you, Michael. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Regine.
That's it for this episode of Career Coaching Secrets. If you enjoyed this conversation, you can subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening to this episode to catch future episodes. This podcast was brought to you by Purple Circle, where we help career coaches scale their business to $100,000 years, $100,000 months, or even $100,000 weeks, all without burning out and making sure that you're making the impact and having the life that you want. To learn more about our community and how we can help you, visit joinpurplecircle.com.